All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melon heads of the world, and happy Thursday, everybody. Today is October 17th, 2024. We are back in the studio this morning after the trip to Puerto Rico, and I got to warn you guys, we got in super late last night after midnight, so I'm about as sharp as wet leather this morning. If I slur my speech or if I say something that's a little off, take everything with a grain of salt here because I am running on fumes. And as my moderator, Mish, mentioned this morning, he says, hey, Jack, I'm just saying they do make caffeine suppositories these days. And, well, I am so tired that it's normally not my style, but I would consider 180 degrees of caffeination at this moment. But we got a show to do. We're going to move right on past that. Big tech is going nuclear, guys. That is the big story. We heard it yesterday. We've actually heard a little bit about this earlier this week, too, with Google. Google and Amazon both are signing deals for small modular reactors. They're pursuing nuclear as part of this AI mania because the kind of like unspoken elephant in the room of artificial intelligence and these massive data centers is all the power that they use. Remember, all these companies are like the head of the whole ESG and all the climate and the planet and the unicorns and the rainbows thing, and they're all conveniently overlooking the fact that every single one of these NVIDIA GPUs, of which there are hundreds of thousands of them being sold, every single one of them uses as much power as a family of four or a house of four people. So if, say, Grok AI or XAI or whatever Elon's AI company is, and he says, I'm going to build a 100,000 GPU data center, he's basically saying, I'm going to use as much power as a city of 400,000 people. Well, our power grid, you may notice, is not in the best shape that it's ever been in. And, well, we can't afford to just be like, here's a city of 400,000 people worth of power demand all of a sudden and expect the grid to just immediately compensate. And, oh, yeah, everything is just fine. It doesn't work that way. And so as we're adding this massive new source of demand, these companies are, kind of overlooking the fact that, yeah, we're about to drive up energy prices for everybody, assuming this build out continues. Because we just saw yesterday that story about ASML and their bookings being down more than 50%. I'm not so sure all of these data centers that are currently planned are ever actually going to get built. I'd actually be very surprised if they all got built. But they've already built a lot of them, and they're currently building a lot of them. And so the power demand is really going to spike here. So all of these moves into nuclear, these small modular reactors, they're basically big bets that energy prices are going sharply, sharply higher, which is another reason, besides watch gold, besides watch silver and Bitcoin and what stocks are doing, and dovish central banks, ECB cutting rates again today. Besides all those reasons, if these AI mania bubble things keep getting built, you can bet we're going to have much higher electricity prices, much higher fuel prices, and, well, that could bring inflation back. Now, here's the thing. In this article in Ars Technica today mentioned it. All of these deals that are being signed and these memorandums of understandings and these written agreements to maybe hopefully someday do a thing, non-binding resolutions, exploration of technology, they're all for reactors that are not currently legal to operate. They're all for reactors that there is not one single example of a functioning reactor anywhere in the world. These small modular reactors, I love the technology. I'm a big fan of nuclear. I worked in nuclear for 15 years. But the fact is, there is not a single small modular reactor commercially in operation anywhere in the United States. Now, we have small modular reactors operating underwater and on the surface of the water all over the world. We call them aircraft carriers and submarines. I think we can do it. I don't think the technology is that difficult. And some of these new reactor designs are very innovative. And they take the current fleet of nuclear power plants, which I think are perfectly safe and incredible machines, and even further improves on them, makes them more efficient, makes the fuel less long-lived and radioactive, actually has more fuel security because some of this stuff can run on unenriched or depleted uranium where they breed their own fissile fuel as you run them. So there's a lot of innovative designs here. But the big problem with these reactors is the regulatory structure, is the NRC. And when I was talking to Mish about this today, because Mish has a nuclear background as well, we were having our morning briefing. He says, do you think this is going to be what finally pushes Congress to get the NRC the hell out of the way when it comes to small modular reactors. Because the NRC, guys, the regulatory framework for nuclear is built around these giant pigs, these 1,100 megawatt monolithic reactors, these big giant things, and they have massive regulatory costs associated with them. Well, a small modular reactor that only generates 20 or 30 megawatts can't afford the regulatory cost that goes along with an 1,100 megawatt reactor. You can't just put that onto these tiny little reactors and expect them to be economically viable. It just doesn't work. And the NRC currently has no framework in place for licensing and operating anything resembling these reactors that are currently being pursued. And so I guess what I'm getting at here is I'm excited to see the technology moving forward. I'm excited to see the financial firepower of big tech backing small modular reactor technology, because I think it's good for civilization and humanity and the planet and everything and economics. I think it's awesome. But the fact is, these reactors are going to take so long to get approved and built. And even then, there's a lot of asterisks. Can we do it right? Can we do it economically? NuScale tried it, and I believe it was Utah. They had to abandon the project because of cost overruns. Can we even do it economically? There's a lot of variables here. These things are not going to get built anytime soon. And these stocks, these SMR stocks, are rallying like the blazes on this news. I think they're getting a little ahead of themselves, like everything in this AI bubble. And that's besides the fact that, hey, what if this bubble does pop, as ASML's release yesterday kind of suggested may be on the horizon? Well, then these reactors would definitely not get built if all the financial reasoning to build them goes up in smoke. Now, I hope when this bubble bursts, and it will burst, it is my sincere hope that these big tech companies continue pursuing this technology, because I think it's awesome. But I'm worried that when the bubble bursts, they're just going to cancel their plans and walk away and say, oh, well, we tried. Also going on this morning, we've got China's stimulus once again disappoints. And this was actually a pretty big one. Stop me if you've heard this one, guys, that China does a stimulus thing and the market says that's not enough and the stocks fall. We've seen this quite a bit lately. This time they held another briefing with their finance ministry, and they unveiled a 4 trillion yuan loan book for whitelist projects, basically loans that they are going to issue to these bankrupt or in the process of going bankrupt developers who have already sold homes, and the buyers took out mortgages and they're paying mortgages on these homes. And then they're like, we ran out of money. We're not going to build them. Excuse me? I got a mortgage that I'm making a payment on, and you haven't even built the house that I took out a mortgage to buy from you. And now you're telling me you're not going to build it? Say what? And so in 2022, we had this big mortgage boycott that went on in China. It got pretty ugly for a while there. This move that was made today, this 4 trillion yuan loan package, which is about 562 billion, guys, more than $500 billion. This is not a small plan, but really what it's about is a bank bailout. This is about making sure these homes get built so that mortgage boycott doesn't come back, and so that those Chinese banks don't fail when everybody stops paying their loans. That's what this one really is. And also, when you think about what the problem is in China right now, they have too much housing and not enough people, and the housing is going up and the people are going down, which means the problem is getting worse. Well, what do you think happens when you monetize $500 billion worth of debt to build even more housing? Supply go up, demand go down, price goes lower. So when you think about it, this stimulus plan that they just announced, all of this money, all it's really going to do is make the thing even worse. It's going to make the housing bubble, or I should say the bursting of the housing bubble, even worse. Maybe that's why Chinese stocks were down on this news. Also, we got news from Phillips 66 yesterday. They are closing their Los Angeles refinery. An oil refinery produces about 8% of California's fuel. They are shutting it down. That refinery was over 100 years old. Now, Phillips was out with a talking point this morning. They're being very adamant that this refinery closure has nothing to do with Gavin Newsom's new law. All the stories about this refinery closing, they're all being phrased in the context of just a few days ago, Gavin Newsom signed a law that requires the fuel industry to have a certain reserve of fuel on standby so that prices don't spike during outages. something very similar to what the Northeast had after Hurricane Sandy. And then, of course, the Northeast got rid of that last year. Phillips 66 was very adamant this morning with their talking points saying this is not a political decision. It doesn't have anything to do with that refinery law. I don't know if that is true or not. A lot of people are drawing conclusions there. Here's my take on this. All right. My take, this refinery was over 100 years old. 100-year-old fuel refinery. When's the last time we built a refinery in this country? I don't know. It's been decades. Since before I was born, since before I was even a Bad Idea and a Barry White album, nothing even freaking close to a refinery being built in this country. Now we're shutting down the century-old ones. We don't even have any plans to build new ones. Go ahead, try to get an oil refinery built in California. See what happens. It's like everybody just hands off the keyboard. Let's just sit back and watch what happens when they try to build an oil refinery in California. It's going to be adorable. Just watch the nuts come out of the woodworks. We need to build these things again, guys. I get the climate and the unicorns and the rainbows thing, and I get it. But here's an idea. Maybe a new refinery would actually be more efficient. Maybe a new refinery would be better for the environment than the freaking 100-year-old ones that we're still running. But you know what? Anybody who tries to build one is going to be vilified. They're going to be called robber barons. They're trying to rape Mother Earth, all this other stuff. Forget it. It'll never happen. And nobody's even trying right now. There's not even a concept, an idea, a twinkle in some executive's eye somewhere about building another refinery in this country. So what are we doing? We're just going to keep running these century-old ones, shutting them down one by one until I don't know, eventually there won't be any fuel. So we've got to start building refineries again, or at least modernizing the ones we have. That's my takeaway from that Phillips story. We got Travelers Insurance tripled their profits, even though they're also doubling and tripling their homeowners policy costs. So I guess the insurance companies that have been crying poverty, and your results say otherwise. The ECB cut rates again today, 25 basis points. That is their third rate cut this year, dovish central banks. And we got initial jobless claims. They were elevated again, but not as bad as last week. 241,000 initial claims versus an upwardly revised 260,000 from last week. So the employment situation continues to weaken, although not as bad as last week. Continuing claims also rose. Why don't we shrink my big melon of a head and let's see what's going on in the market, shall we? And guys, while we're doing that, if you wouldn't mind that thumbs up button, that like button, it really helps with the algo. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and have your coffee with the Melon Heads. And we're having a little extra coffee this morning, as we said, because of the travel schedule. I got in pretty late last night. The S&P up 36 points, 0.62% higher this morning. The Dow is up another 100 points, or 0.25%. And the NASDAQ is up 233 points. Wow, tech stocks are a-flying today. Not sure what's driving this 1.1% move in the NASDAQ here, but we got a big move in tech. Was something just announced in the last couple of minutes that I'm not privy to? I don't know. But right now, look at the dollar. Big strengthening all of a sudden. Not sure what happened. What was that? At 8.40, we had a big strengthening in the dollar. That was the initial and continuing claims, I believe. Currently 13 basis points higher here at 103.72. Keep an eye on the dollar today. Continues to strengthen a little bit. And as the dollar strengthens, we are watching the yen weaken again. Very briefly today, we were over 150 yen to the dollar. It's basically been weakening ever since mid-September when the Bank of Japan came out and said, don't worry, guys, we're in no hurry to hike rates again. We're going to let the U.S. do their rate cuts. We're not going to slam close that arbitrage opportunity between U.S. and Japanese interest rates. We saw the yen carry trade start to unwind in August. We don't want to repeat that. And so we're going to be a little more dovey than we've been. And the yen has done nothing but weaken versus the dollar ever since. Looking over at the bond market, we have got yields much higher, actually, in the middle and long end of the curve, pretty much flat on the short end. The 30-year Treasury, 4.355. That's up 5.5 basis points. The 10-year, 4.077, up 6 points. The 2-year is at 4.002, up almost 7 points. And the 1 month is at 4.788. That is actually down a fraction of 1 point. I'm not sure what just happened, guys, but we got a big move in yields here. We had a sudden strengthening of the dollar, and tech stocks are higher. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm not sure what hit in just the last couple of seconds. But if I had to guess, I would say gold is probably up then on that news, and gold is up on that news. A new record, 2,683 for spot gold here, up another 10 bucks, 0.38% higher. Spot silver is doing not quite as well. It's up a couple of pennies here, 4 cents higher at 31.72 for my favorite of the shinies. That's up 0.14%. Copper's down about 0.75%. Platinum is up 1%. Palladium is up 1.5%. And crude oil pretty much unchanged here, down 3 cents at $70.34. Take a look at that gold chart, guys. New all-time high for gold. There it is, right there. For some reason, my I don't know, my marker just has not been working right lately. There it is, all-time high for gold futures here, or this is actually spot gold. We took out the prior high from back in September. It continues to move higher. Look, guys, central banks are getting dovish. Stimulus over in China. Tech stocks are rallying like crazy, and gold is running. I mean, this is forecasting a return of inflation. First, it hits asset prices, then it hits consumer inflation, and last but not least, wages rise. And it looks like we're already back into that asset prices skyrocketing phase of the typical sequence of events for inflation. Gold is rallying like crazy here, and so is Bitcoin, still out above this bear or bull flag situation, bull flag pattern that they broke out of this week. 66,995 for Bitcoin. That's down a little bit this morning on Coinbase here, $620 lower, but still up sharply from where we were about a week ago. All right, let's talk about the nuke story now. Here we go. Amazon goes nuclear to invest more than $500 million to develop small modular reactors. AWS announced it signed an agreement with Dominion Energy's Virginia utility company to explore the development of a small modular nuclear reactor near Dominion's existing North Anna nuclear power station. So North Anna is one of the big, I don't know how big North Anna specifically is. It's probably somewhere around 1,000 megawatts. I think North Anna is a multi-unit site. I could be wrong about that. But it's one of your traditional nuclear power plants in Virginia. They want to put some of these small modular reactors right next to that. That makes sense because you've already got your grid interconnections and everything is right there. But I want to just emphasize here, guys, the agreement was to explore the development of. It's not to build. It's not to buy power from. It doesn't commit to anything. They're going to explore the development of. All right. It's an idea. It's a sketch on the back of a napkin. That's essentially what that is here. Amazon Web Services is investing more than $500 million in nuclear power, announcing 3 projects from Virginia to Washington State. AWS subsidiary in cloud computing has a massive and increasing need for clean energy as it expands its services into generative AI. It's also a part of Amazon's path to net zero carbon emissions. Yeah, their path to net zero carbon emissions as they build out data centers that use more power than entire cities. And right now, that power is coming from mostly natural gas and coal. And so they're like, well, don't worry, we're throwing $500 million at small modular reactors that may get built many years from now, and therefore we're still somehow net zero carbon. Hey, don't ask me to put myself in the mind of a green. I don't understand how that works either. But AWS announced that it has signed an agreement with Dominion Energy, Virginia's utility company, to explore the development of a small modular nuclear reactor, or SMR, near Dominion's existing North Anna station. Nuclear reactors produce no carbon emissions. I agree with that statement. Now, that was not the only agreement Amazon announced yesterday. You had the Dominion deal in Virginia, but Amazon also announced a new agreement with utility company Energy Northwest. That's a consortium of state public utilities in order to fund the development, licensing, and construction of 4 small modular reactors in Washington State. The reactors will be built, owned, and operated by Energy Northwest, but will provide energy directly to the grid, which will also help Amazon power operations. Under the agreement, Amazon will have the right to purchase electricity from the first 4 modules, and Energy Northwest has the option to build up to 8 additional modules. That power would also be available to Amazon and utilities in the Northwest to power homes and businesses. All right, so this article is, there's a lot of the hopium in this article. Oh, small modular reactors solve all the, I don't want to say problems, but all the obstacles that have slowed or prevented the development of traditional nuclear power. They're supposed to be more cost effective. They're supposed to be less risky. Companies don't have to invest their entire balance sheet in single projects that could lead to these disasters like the reactors that they tried to build in South Carolina and Georgia that went billions and billions of dollars over budget. But this article in Ars Technica actually is a little bit more realistic here. Amazon joins Google in investing in small modular nuclear power. And right away in this first paragraph, they pretty much say the most important thing here. On Tuesday, Google announced that it had made a power purchase agreement for electricity generated by a small modular nuclear reactor design that hasn't even received regulatory approval yet. Today, it's Amazon's turn. The company, Amazon Web Services Group, has announced 3 different investments, including one targeting a different startup that has its own design for small modular nuclear reactors, one that has not yet received regulatory approval. See the common thread here? None of these things are legal to operate. They are unproven, unapproved designs. You can't build one right now. If you show up at the site with a shovel and a cement mixer, all right, I'm going to build a reactor here, the government will arrest you and throw you in jail. You can't. Unlike Google's deal, which is a commitment to purchase power should the reactors ever be completed, Amazon will lay out some money up front as part of the agreements. Guys, these are just wishful thinking, all right? And again, I love nuclear power. I've spent a lot of time working in nuclear power. I hope these things get built, but let's not sit here and pretend like these reactors are going to be there in time for these massive data centers that all these big tech firms are planning on building, which means energy prices, electricity prices are going higher. If they keep building and running these things like crazy, it's going to drive up your electric bill. And I guess they're throwing a couple of few thousand words at these articles to try to be like, it's okay, plebs, don't get so angry with us that your utility bills are going up even more so that we can tell you to glue your pizzas together with our chatbots because we're building nuclear reactors. Somehow, eventually, maybe, we hope. And on top of that, guys, look at what these stocks are doing. Check out some of these SMR stocks. Now, this is NuScale Power. Now, NuScale is the closest company to building an SMR. They actually do have reactor design certification from the NRC. All right, NuScale's there. I forget what type of reactor they run. I think it's a fast breeder reactor. They were going to build a reactor, but they canceled the project because of cost overruns. But they actually do have design certification, although right now there are no reactors currently under construction for the NuScale model. That stock rallied 40% yesterday on this news. NuScale was not involved in any of these deals, and yet their stock rallied 40% on this news. Why? Because the AI mania has now reached nuclear stocks. These things are not going to be built anytime soon. I can guarantee you that. I would be amazed if one of these reactors is running before 2030. Also, another SMR company, Oklo, that's one I've talked about in the past. They were up 42% on this news yesterday. None of these companies, NuScale, Oklo, they have no revenue. They have no earnings. They have no product in operation anywhere in the world. Their stocks rallied 40% on this news yesterday. The AI mania has come for nuclear power. Also going on this morning, China's $562 billion loan push for unfinished homes disappoints. Guys, man, the Chinese stock market is like, please, sir, may I have some more? Give me my stimmies. And they're like, okay, here's $500 billion. No, that's not enough. What? Yeah, not enough. $562 billion for their whitelist home loans. China's pledge to nearly double the loan quota for unfinished residential projects to 4 trillion yuan or $562 billion fell short of market expectations, causing property shares to retreat as investors looked for stronger policies. The government set the new year-end target for loans to so-called whitelist property projects after dispersing 2.23 trillion yuan as of October 16th. The measure is aimed at ensuring home completion as part of a basket of initiatives announced during a Thursday briefing. The whitelist program is part of a top-down plan to ensure unfinished homes are delivered to buyers and prevent another widespread mortgage boycott. That's the key to this one, guys. This is a bank bailout. This is all about getting those projects finished for those homes that people don't need, but for whatever reason they have mortgages on. If you want those people to pay the mortgage, you better build the freaking thing. I guess that makes sense. Many of the nation's property developers are still grappling with a multi-year cash crunch that led many of them to halt constructions and default on their debts, delivering China's sold but unbuilt homes, estimated at 48 million units, will require around 3 trillion yuan of direct funding from the central government, according to Nomura Holdings. Guys, 48 million housing units. That's enough unsold homes to house almost the entire population of France that has already been sold and hasn't been built yet. That is a huge glut of new supply that is about to hit market. But the market may be disappointed about no concrete number for special bonds for buying unsold units. That was according to Raymond Chang, the head of China property research at CGS International Securities Hong Kong. The market wants more. $500 billion in stimmies was not enough. The CSI 300 was down another 1.1% on this news. Ever since this peak up here when they announced the initial, come on, guys, stop messing with me. My marker just won't work for me here. Ever since they announced the initial stimulus plan and actually put some numbers on it, we have done nothing but head lower. Yesterday, no exception for the CSI 300. The Hang Seng did the same thing here, down another 1% yesterday on this news. I don't know what the market is hoping for, trillions and trillions. They got $500 billion yesterday, and they still want even more. China's stock market is doing what ours did in 2020. Give us more stimmies and our stocks will go up. And then eventually comes the consumer inflation. And then they start raising rates to make sure the plebs don't get a raise. Also, oil company Phillips 66 says it will shut down a Los Angeles area refinery. This one hit late yesterday. Oil company Phillips 66 announced Wednesday that it had plans to shut down a Los Angeles area refinery by the end of 2025, citing market concerns. The refinery accounts for about 8% of California's refining capacity, according to the State Energy Commission. The company said it will remain operating in the state. With the long-term sustainability of our Los Angeles refinery uncertain and affected by market dynamics, we are working with leading land development firms to evaluate the future use of our unique and strategically located properties near the Port of Los Angeles, said CEO Mark Lashier in a statement. Phillips 66 remains committed to serving California and will continue to take the necessary steps to meet our commercial and customer demands. The closure will impact 600 employees and 300 contractors who help operate the refinery, the company said in the news release. The refinery consists of 2 facilities that were built more than a century ago. Now, guys, I'm sure all of the attention on this story is going to go to Newsom's law that was signed a few days ago. People are, tying this to that decision. It may or may not have played a role in that. But I think the key thing here with this story is that last sentence that I read here. The refinery consists of 2 facilities that were built more than a century ago. We are using 100-year-old plants to make our fuel. Maybe it's time we built another one. I know, crazy idea. Actually build an oil refinery. I know. I'll see myself out. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm sorry. Let's keep using our century-old, steam engine-powered crap instead of building modern, more efficient, more environmentally sound facilities, right? Let's just continue with the pipe dreams about wind and solar and ignore where our power comes from. Also going on here, Traveler stock leaps toward a record as income triples and profitability improves. We're running a little short on time, so I'm not going to spend too much time here, guys, but keep this in mind over the next few months because we are going to watch homeowner policies go up sharply, especially in the Southeast, once again, especially in Florida, now in Appalachia. They're going to cry poverty. They're going to say, because of Hurricane Helene, we need more money from you guys, you homeowners. We need to raise your insurance premiums again. Never mind the fact that our revenue was up 11.9% year over year and that our net income rose 211%. Travelers' profitability tripled in the last year while your homeowners' insurance premiums have skyrocketed. Although I would add that there was a 10% rise in catastrophe losses due to Hurricane Helene. That 10% rise in catastrophe losses did nothing to prevent the 211% rise in profitability. Traveler stock is up almost 7%. Actually, it's up 5.75% here, $256.86. Now that the opening bell has rung, we also got another rate cut from the ECB here. 3.25% is now the overnight rate in Europe. That's their 3rd rate cut this year. It's not just the Fed that's in dovish mode. We've also got the ECB, the Bank of England, Australia, Canada, China. They're all in dovish mode. Japan claims they're in hawkish mode, but it is the most pathetically weak, most emaciated hawk you've ever seen. Central banks go Zerpenberg, guys. It is coming back. Get ready for round 2 of inflation in the 2020s. And last but not least, initial jobless claims in the U.S. rose to 241,000 for the week ending October 12th. That is versus expectations of 260,000 and down from 260,000 last week. So still elevated initial claims, but not nearly as bad as that sudden spike that we had last week. And continuing claims also rose to 1,867,000 for the week ending October 5th. That's up from 1,858,000. So some further signs of weakness in the labor market here. Not terrible, but also not great. Maybe that had contributed to some of that move in the dollar and the interest rates that we saw earlier today. And I just want to say thank you very much to Mighty Mike 53, Dixie 200-day moving average. Buckle up. Did I miss the 200-day moving average on the DXY? Are we about to cross above that one? Look, the Dixie had been weakening substantially ever since last fall, about a year ago, right? Right around Halloween last year, the dollar started to weaken substantially. Now we've seen it strengthen quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if that's just a dead cat bounce along the way lower, or is this have something more to do with what's going on in Japan? And all of a sudden, the Japanese have virtually abandoned their hawkish moves. I mean, all these hawks, Ueda was supposed to be a hawk, their new finance minister, their new prime minister. These guys are all supposed to be hawks. And all we've gotten so far is 25 basis points of rate cuts in about a year and 6 months. These guys have been in charge. So central banks are dovey-dovey. And right now, well, we'll keep an eye on the Dixie there at 103.78. It has risen a little bit. We almost went below 100 for a few days there. Thank you for that heads up about the 200-day moving average. Maybe we'll bring that one up on the stream tomorrow morning. Thank you, Mighty Mike. Appreciate the super chat, sir. And thank you, Steve Woitis, who says, big tech investing in nuclear for AI energy demand. But are we seeing big tech getting into the utility business to sell U.S. energy? Not necessarily, not directly. Big tech is not going to come start running utilities. As a matter of fact, utilities is about as far from big tech as you can possibly get, right? Big tech, they don't pay dividends. They don't earn money. They have huge revenue numbers, very little profit numbers. They're all about next year's earnings. They're all about the next big thing. Whereas utility companies are your safe, slow-moving dividend payers. They're almost like bonds. They're not quite U.S. Treasuries in their boredom, but utilities are meant to be boring stocks. Utilities are not meant to rocket 50% year to date like some of these utilities have done. But because of this AI bubble and this AI mania has gone so crazy, and now after all of the ridiculous, stupid talking points from Jensen Huang and Sam Altman over the last few years about how we're going to build 85 quadrillion GPUs, people are finally saying, well, geez, what happens if we plug them in? The freaking power grid fails. And so the next logical choice is, well, we need to build more power plants. And now all of a sudden they're all just saying nuclear because these are all the climate change guys, right? These are all the effective altruists. Sam Altman wants everybody to eat bugs to save the climate. Well, then how do you rectify that with building a data center that uses more power than all those bug-eating people combined? And right now that power comes from carbon-emitting sources. They have to go nuclear to save face. Otherwise, it exposes what freaking hypocrites they are. But in typical big tech fashion, now they're making promises that they know they can't possibly deliver on. And some of these things these guys are doing, like claiming these reactors are going to be running by 2027 or 2028, no chance. No freaking chance. At the rate the NRC moves, and Sam Altman doesn't have any sway at the NRC. Neither does Jensen Huang. Neither does Bill Gates. They don't run things at the NRC. The NRC is run by some very careful, very methodical, very slow-moving people who don't give a shit what's being said on CNBC. And so I don't think these reactors are going to be ready anytime soon. Higher power prices are coming if this bubble does not burst. Sharply higher power prices. Thank you very much, Steve Woitis. No, I don't think big tech is going to get in the utility business. They might partner with utilities, but they won't run them. It's not a business that it doesn't jive with their mentality. And also, thank you, Citrus Squeeze, Mr. OJ. I appreciate that very much. He says, thank you for the dedication to the channel. Thank you, sir, for the dedication to the channel, for showing up here in the morning with the other Melonheads to have your coffee. And thank you, everybody else, for having your coffee. Thanks, Citrus Squeeze. I appreciate the super chat, sir, and the good vibes this morning. It's good to be back in the studio, guys. And also, thank you very much to all my magnanimous Melonheads on YouTube and Patreon. Looking forward to talking to you guys tonight at 7 p.m. for our weekly get-together on Zoom. Links down below, should you feel so inclined. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Love you guys. Everybody, till next time, live small and dream big.